Internet. Welcome back to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody.
Ron Fortier.
Howdy, y'all.
And David Rios.
He's there. I promise. He's moving.
Did he hear you?
I don't know. Dave, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Oh, we can't
you
hear
are
him.
muted, buddy.
Oh, he's not showing up as muted. I think it's a microphone thing.
Hello, Dave.
Dave's going to prepare his audio, but in the meantime, we are today going to be talking about a decision that you'll come to as someone publishing your own comics. Do you wish to put your book out strictly as floppies, strictly as a trade paperback, both? Jump straight to an omnibus?
Right.
And, yeah. I forgot that there's someone who actually did that. They already established a creator. So they're able to spend time because that takes quite a bit of time to make one, but it worked out for them. But speaking of publishing floppies, though, Ron is also in the middle of launching Beyond the Stars issue number 5.
That's right, the funding campaign, where we are, I think at 76% right now.
76%.
Yeah, and that's moving, right along. It's doing all right. I'm 13 days left. I feel confident, and Roland does, and everybody involved, Andrea, that we're going to meet this goal. Again, there's still some nice, I think, art pieces left.
Tommy's inks.
Yeah.
And again, the thing to always remind people, if you're interested in the series at all, and say, hey, I didn't pick up issues 1 and 4. That's one of the nice things about Silverline crowdfunding. You can pick up all 4 previous issues if you so desire, and just be caught up in the entire series, get the entire package 1 to 5. Besides ordering other Silverline titles, as done by some of our friends right here tonight, Jose and Tim, David. And Jose, by the way, has an alternate cover. It's alternate cover number C.
That's right.
And Rob Davis did the alternate cover to number B. And of course, the creator of the series, Andrea Bermuda, has number A. So hey, if you feel generous, buy all 3.
Yeah.
Right?
All 3 look beautiful.
There you go. And the A-Cup, of course, also comes in foil, which is something we only offer for people who do pre-orders.
That's right.
Right.
Oh, and that one's Andrea's cover is the foil cover.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
I think Roland showed it off on the Sunday night show. Yeah. And I was really taken. It came out looking fantastic. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. And so, hey, like I said, we've got 13 days left, almost 2 weeks. Hey, if you've already pledged, please share this with your friends. If you've been following the series from number 1, again, word of mouth, the best advertising you can ever have on any independent comic book project. Okay, these are we're not the big guys like Marvel or DC, so we do rely a lot on our friends and past readers who've enjoyed what we've done. Nothing sells a product more than good word of mouth. So help spread the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to bring up, and this is probably somebody's probably going to say you're jumping the gun a little bit, but yesterday, out of the blue, Monday morning, get up and I get a message from Roland. And Roland's all about, we're going to make the goal. Don't worry about it, Ron. And he's like pushing stretch goals, right? We have to have a stretch goal. We have to have something really awesome for a stretch goal, right? And what he's basically shooting for is $1,000. And if we hit $1,000, we're going to have a stretch goal. So he, myself, and Rob got together and decided what that stretch goal would be. And I sent all of you guys those covers today. And if you want to put that up at all, Tim, I will let everybody know what this stretch goal will be if we do hit $1,000.
There you go.
It's going to be a free digital copy of my pulp novel, Captain Hazard, Python Men of the Lost City. And that's the front and back cover. Captain Hazard has a unique place in the history of American pulps in that there was ever only one issue of his own series. And you get a little bit of that on the back cover. That's the original Captain Hazard that came out, I think, like 1938. And there was never a second issue. Over the years, I happened to pick up a facsimile edition of it at a convention. I read it through. I thought it was a hoot. I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the characters a lot, but it was easy for me to tell why there was never a second issue, because the writer basically wanted to get the job done. It wasn't his cup of tea, and he just turned it in, could care less. And the book was rife with all kinds of plot holes. I mean, a little bit of sloppy writing. He'd forget characters' names, and they would change from one chapter to another. So over the years, going to pulp conventions, I would meet with other pulp fans, and the topic always came up, the one-hit wonder Captain Hazard. Well, when Rob and I started our own little production company, Airship 27 Productions, I got to thinking more and more about this whole character in that one issue, with the realization that he was now in public domain. So I sat down years ago, maybe 15, 16 years ago, and literally took the facsimile edition I had and actually rewrote the entire book from front to back. And as I did, corrected those problems I had seen in the original text, to the point of even adding a couple of chapters to smooth the narrative and the plot, defining the characters a whole lot better. And we published this, which ended up being the first of 5 Captain Hazard novels that I've written since this particular first attempt at this. And it was a lot of fun to do. It was a challenge. And once it hit the pulp community, you know, I just sat back, kept my fingers crossed to see what other pulp fans would say when they got their hands on this, and whether I had done what I set out to do or not. Knock on wood, the overwhelming reaction was, dang, 40, it made it readable, it's fun, it's a good book. Now, after like 75 so years. So, hey, kudos to the actual author and creator, was a writer named Paul Chadwick. He used the house name, as you see in the front cover, called Chester Hawks. But it was really Paul Chadwick, and he was a yeoman pulp writer in his day. And, you know, he took a misstep with Captain Hazard because, again, it wasn't his cup of tea. He liked to write urban crime mysteries. Those were his forte. But his publisher egged him to do this high adventure series, and it was intended to be a ripoff of the very popular Doc Savage series. So, again, that's a little history, a little pulp history. And like, the book's been out and on sale at Amazon for the past 16 years. I sell a lot of copies of it, and the other 4 Captain Hazard novels, which I wrote, which are now all original novels from my own warped imagination. I've had a blast with this character and his supporting cast. But we thought, hey, you know what? We talked enough about, you know, pulps on this show, and this would make a really cool stretch goal. Maybe introduce some comic fans to the world of pulps. So there you go. I mean, we hit that $1,000 mark. Everyone who has pledged, regardless of the amount they pledged, will get a digital copy of Captain Hazard, Python Men of the Lost City.
That's awesome.
I have my copy.
What's that, Jose?
I have that copy.
Do you really?
Read it, yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Did you like it?
Oh, I loved it. Honestly, I thought it was great.
Okay, thank you. That I did not know. That is very cool. I'm most grateful.
You had mentioned it a while back, not on a show, but like when one of the chats, I think that we're a part of or something, you had mentioned about it, and I was like, you know what, that looks interesting. I want to read it, so I had to go find it and whatnot. And
yeah. Hey, look, I don't want to derail us, but I have to add an epilogue to all this. We get the first book out, right, and then I sit down and start trying to plot what the second book is going to be, and I've come up with this idea, for a new Captain Hazard novel, brand new, first time ever. And I'm working on the plot and getting it ready, and I get an email from a pulp fan who says to me, he says, there was a second Captain Hazard novel. Okay, I mean, that shook me up a little bit. I mean, all I'd ever heard was that was it, the one and only Python Men of the Lost City. Okay. Well, according to this fan, he goes on to tell me Chadwick had actually written a second one, but they canceled the book. So he turns around and, like any good pulp writer, turns around and changes it into a Secret Agent X novel. And it was published in Secret Agent X magazine.
There you go.
Okay. I write the fan back. And I went, wow, I did not know any of that. Thanks for the information. I really appreciate it. A week later, I get this package in the mail. Big, thick package. I open it up, and there's that issue of Secret Agent X. He had Xerox every single page of it.
Oh, nice.
All right. He goes, he said, I wanted you to read this. All right. And he says, I'm just curious if there's any way you could turn it back into a Captain Hazard novel. Well, I sat down over a period of a couple of days, read this thing. As I am reading it, I am getting it. It's like I'm channeling Paul Chadwick, all right? And I'm going, oh, you sneaky bastard. This is what you changed. Okay, yeah. This isn't a spy. This is one of Hazard's aides or whatever. So that by the time I finished it, reading it, I went, oh yeah, we got to do this thing. We got to do this thing. The Secret Agent adventure was called Curse of the Crimson Horde. And it all takes place in the Philippines, right? And it's about a blood red diamond called the Red Maggot. And I went, oh, forget Crimson Horde, right? I sat down again with this thing over a period of a month and a half and totally rewrote it, changing the characters back to Hazard, back to his bag, blah, 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 and titled it Captain Hazard, Curse of the Red Maggot.
Nice.
And it was the third Captain Hazard that we published and we got out there. So again, it's just writing this thing, especially after having rewritten the first one, it was weird because as I was writing it, I was like, this is where I'd go with the plot. And 2 or 3 chapters or, whatever later, that's where he was going. It was like I was like in his head all the time rewriting this, knowing what he had done originally and how he had changed it. So it's like, it's weird. It's absolutely weird. It's like tuning into, like I said, a guy who was at the top of his game back in 1938, long gone, not remembered by a lot of people. But those of us who love pulps really know how really creative and super talented these guys were. I mean, basically, pulps were the foundations of comic books. So get us back on course and topic, gentlemen. Thank you.
There you go. So yeah, and we can also thank Pulps as well for kind of giving us our formatting to a bit because, you get your 5-cent pulp is only maybe 130 pages, whereas at the time we were getting these epics that go much longer. Lord of the Rings, of course, being massive. And comics, of course, being a 22-page format. And on average, printers will change and you can kind of do whatever. But at Silverline, we publish floppies at a 22-page, and we will crowdfund at a floppy. And that is not the only path that you can do as an independent creator, because you can kind of send your digital printer whatever page skew, and as long as I can put it on an even page, you should be able to make it work. And also, you're not bound by, well, this is the budget allotted for a book and paper, so you can only do so many pages per month and try to make your money back. You, literally, whatever you invest in, just what you invest to it, and you just hope to make your money back. And so a lot of publisher independent creators have gone the route of doing, well, I didn't necessarily write it in floppy format. I just wrote like a full arc. So I'm just going to publish it as a trade paperback broken up in chapters. And that is becoming even more frequent. Every time I pop on a Kickstarter or something, just looking at like the new comics page, it's less number ones and more this volume or this arc of this thing this independent team has created. And I don't necessarily think that there's a right or wrong way to go about it, and I'm sure as we'll get into it tonight, a lot of it comes down to what is the correct length for the story you're telling. Right. There's no same thing with film and television, I guess, as a comparison, right? Is it neither is necessarily better than the other. It's the right pacing and cadence for telling your story. So, Ron, I'll jump straight to you. So, with your experience, having worked in, novels and comics and done floppies, has there been a moment where you've done something where you jumped straight to writing the trade or writing the volume and then broken it up later? Or what has been your experience in deciding what is the correct length for storytelling, and what's the correct what point do you kind of come to that realization of like, oh, I want to bring it up this way?
Okay. Well, I'm going to answer that happily, but I wanted to interject a little history about this topic because, again, understand I started reading comics, fanatically as a fan in the early 1950s. By the time I was 5 or 6 years old, I'm a comic book reader. And the concept of the idea or format of a graphic novel was something that didn't exist as I was growing up. That didn't come in to existence until sometimes in the early 70s, when one or two creators at Marvel and DC basically, convinced the powers that be that I've got this long story that I want to write, that we want to put out. I think X-Men was one of the first series that branched off, like Gods and Men or whatever. That was one of the first ever original graphic novels. And let me tell you guys, when that thing came out, it made a big splash, okay? Because again, thinking that all the 50s, all the 60s, all you could get were floppies, or once a year, you'd have the bigger books, which were the annuals. So you had a Superman annual, right? You had a Batman annual. You had a Wonder Woman annual. A few more pennies and you got a thicker comic book. But it wasn't a long story. So all we were used to were the floppies. Okay. Graphic novels come into existence. They become super popular, become, a really great literary form. And over the years, I am basically still writing the short story form, all right, with my contracts doing Terminator, a monthly comic, doing Green Hornet, a monthly comic. And that's the way it goes for most of my career. Then what happens is, years later, I get this idea for this Daughter of Dracula. And by then, I'm just strictly working for independents. So realizing that what I'm going to end up writing is probably going to be a graphic novel, I don't even give a second thought to where it will end up. In fact, I think at the same time I wrote the graphic novel, a few weeks later, I turned around and wrote it into a film script. because the possibilities to me was of publishing a graphic novel. Maybe I could get somebody interested to look at it as a possible film. But so I write the graphic novel. The graphic novel comes to 120 pages. All right. Now, in hindsight, per your question, Tim, I look at that story and those 120 pages, and heaven forbid I'd have ever thought of breaking it up as a series, because it definitely would not have worked for that story. All right. Floppies doing, one a month, and we know how long it takes to get a single issue out these days. All right. Would have killed the entire concept of the story. Daughter of Dracula was something that was powerful, that had a fast pace, that was purposely, set and moved at a certain rhythm, to the point of going to this fever pitch till you come to the final act, the final chapter, and then the epilogue, and you're out of the story. It had to be 120 pages. It nowheres could have worked as several elements, chapters of a floppy. All right. Now, thank the good Lord, no sooner do I have it written than maybe 4 or 5 months later, I hook up with Rob Davis again after like 30, 35 years we hadn't been in touch with each other. And we hook up on social media one night, and Rob goes, "So what are you doing? Get any projects?" And I sat back and went, "Oh, I have a project." Tell him about Daughter of Dracula. He asked me to send him the digital copy, which I did. And Rob then agreed to illustrate all of it, 1 page a week, till it was finished. And so for the next 2 years, Rob did 1 page a week of Daughter of Dracula. Till it was done, we ultimately collected it, and we've sold hundreds and hundreds of copies at conventions, and et cetera. But again, doing the floppies, there are certain stories that will work with floppies. And if you have a mindset of doing that, because see, this is one of the things that bothers me about this whole floppies versus graphic novels. Graphic novels have become such an in thing in our media that a lot of fans won't buy the floppies, because they know, oh, well, eventually it's going to get collected, blah, blah, blah. And you lose sales because they'd just as soon wait, not have to buy it twice, and buy the collection or the graphic novel when it comes out. All right. So pros and cons on both sides. I'll give you one other example. I'll let you guys jump in with this. About 2 years ago, Mike Belcher and I had become friends. And one day we're talking on the phone, and Mike was intrigued with this whole pulp stuff and whatever, and says to me, I'd like to draw a pulp comic if you wanted to write something based on a classic pulp character. All right. Back and forth, I decided we'd do a Black Bat story. Classic pulp character from the 30s and 40s. And Mike said, well, why don't we do his origin? Has it ever been done in comics? I said, no, it hasn't. That's a really great idea. So I managed to go out and find online a facsimile reprint of that very first Black Bat pulp magazine. Got it, read his origin, and sat down and started adapting it to comic form and script. Okay. So the weeks are going by. We talk once a week. And I told Mike, I said, hey, Mike, I got to tell you, I said, maybe we should break this up. And Mike comes back to me with, well, why? I said, well, if I'm going to do this novel right, I says, it's going to be long. I said, right now I'm almost up to like 33, 34 pages. And God bless Mike. Mike just sat back and said, keep writing. Don't worry. Just tell the story, get it done, right? So we end up with like almost 130 pages. I sent the script to Mike. Mike went crazy for it. Sometimes next month, we're going to announce that Mike is working on the Black Bat graphic novel. And it is a graphic novel, because once he gave me the green light and said, I want to do this. I want to do this story. Don't box it in. Don't separate it. Tell the story the way it was done in the actual prose in the pulp magazine itself. So it's an adaptation of that very first Black Bat introduction pulp magazine. But again, one cohesive story, beginning, middle, and end. And we're going to show off, Mike's going to show off pages online as he's putting it together. But ultimately, when we're ready and he's finished with the artwork, we're going to go to Kablam, and we're going to make it available as a one-shot graphic novel.
No.
All right, so hey,
yeah.
My thoughts.
There we go. Yeah. And there's some interesting things there too that I think once we kind of get to open form at the end, we'll probably bounce off on. But I do want to get David, for your audience there. What have kind of been your thoughts on the pros and cons of floppy versus graphic novel or trade paperback, either as a publishing vehicle or even as a consumer? What have kind of been your thoughts on the values of either?
Well, hopefully you can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. My thoughts are very along the lines of what Ron was talking about. If it all depends on the story and the breakdown that you want to do. Obviously, if you're going to be setting things up as structured cliffhangers per se, then you're going to want to do floppy format. If you're doing a all-inclusive story, then definitely you want to do it as a one-shot trade. And I'm separating the trade between a collection of floppies versus a story. And the Gods and Men, X-Men, I remember that book. Another one that came to mind for me was The Death of Captain Marvel.
Right. Yeah.
That was another book that just stuck out as, this is a book that's written to be a single story. But I think nowadays, a lot of publishers, and I've talked about it before on the show, but a lot of publishers are designing their books, their floppies, to be trades. Huge one is DC. Huge one is Skybound.
Mm-hmm.
All of their books, 6 issues, boom, 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 here, put them in. Oh, well, now we can also do a hardcover. So let's do 10 issues. And all this stuff. And I think you're right, Ron, also about people, balancing. Do we want to sit there and do we want to collect the floppies, or do we want to just wait till they do it? And it's typically the trades are typically a little bit cheaper, so you get a little bit of a discount.
Yep.
But for me, it's like if I'm investing in stories that are done, I would rather do the floppies. And for clarity, floppies is a term for just individual comic that's releases every month. The standard 22-page, 24-page. But for books that are designed that way, I like having, from a consumer point, I like having being able to pull out, and a lot of times you'll get different covers. Maybe you want a particular cover that you like or something like that, kind of tailor your experience. But it's one of those things where you can go in and it sets a stopping point. So you can pick up, read a book. Okay, I got a few more minutes. I can read another book. And it's easy to just set it down before you pick up the next book.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're in the middle of 6-issue trade, yes, you can still put your bookmark in and all that stuff, but it just gives a different sense of a feel for what you do, and that's it for me. But as far as doing from the creative side, one of the things that when I worked at Marvel, a lot of things we got random pages in. I mean, we could be working on, page 2, then page 17 of Hulk, and then you go to get more pages, and now you're on, Spider-Man page, 10 or whatever, and you jumped around a lot. And then you got other ones where you got books where you're doing a book and you're doing the whole book, and there's some time involved with that. But once you start going in and like doing Demon's Tales, it's like, okay, well, and even with Silverstorm, it's like, okay, well, here's the whole book. You got 100 pages. Good luck. So it's a big undertaking. So from a creative point, doing a series, even if it's, in my case, coloring a black and white book that was, produced 30 years ago, it's a big undertaking to do a book. And I almost got involved in a project. I did a couple of sample pages, which would have been like 120, around 100, 120 page volumes. I ended up not actually getting on the project, but I did some test pages on that. But that was a interesting thing because it was, like I said, it was a volume of X amount of pages and under a very tight deadline and all this stuff. So you can definitely feel that there's a lot more pressure when you're doing a much larger volume and a much larger book than when you're doing a floppy. But it all depends on what the schedule is. With Silverline, there's more time for all of the parties to go and do things versus getting into a Marvel monthly release or DC monthly release of you got 30 days, and that's penciling, writing, penciling, inking, coloring, lettering, everything. So it's definitely something that's a bit different on how you're tackling it and all that. So that's kind of my take on it. So
definitely. And it kind of the hit on the point you mentioned there, how it feels like in particular the big two, but other publishers as well are kind of doing the same of, I don't want to say it's disingenuous to the art firm, but it feels like a double dip where where the onset from editorial is we're going to do what's going to be a limited series. We don't necessarily care about the page count each issue, but just write something that'll be 6 issues, and at the end we can bundle it. And then we'll release it as floppies in the process. And that's why you get things like this, where as the trade or graphic novel, great experience. Like, read this as a trade. If you're not getting the floppies to read it unless you just want the covers. Because the experience is different. Whereas Matt Fraction's Batman currently going on.
I'm seeing like this analog of like watching a streaming series or a TV show, right? As opposed to watching a movie. And I get that instinctively when you're watching a limited series, that you get to the end of the hour or whatever it is, 40 minutes, and there's always that need to give you a cliffhanger. And as I was listening to Dave talk, it dawned on me that that's exactly what happened after I had pitched Beyond the Stars to Roland. As we talked about last week, I'd broken down all of the chapters of what the books were, each 22-page chapter, but hadn't really given each a really clear, thought. So until here I am writing those chapters, and it dawns on me, well, okay, if this is a series of floppies, I can't just end it with two guys standing around talking. I need a cliffhanger. I need something dramatic. And that automatically comes with floppies and floppy series. All right. You really need to amp up okay, this has got to work. This is the beat. When we get to the end of each 22 page, there's got to be something dramatic, overly dramatic, that's going to make them want to wait and grab that next issue. Where when you're doing a graphic novel, the rhythm and beat are totally different, and you don't have that scimitar hanging over your head every 10, 15 pages. You have that luxury of, no, this has to happen like this. This has to happen like this. And it's a much more unified storytelling, emotional, roller coaster ride. Whereas you don't have the chopped up cliffhanger serials after every floppy.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying, and kind of this is also in comparison to when you get something like a series that's written for floppy, like comparing that Batman to the current Matt Fraction Batman, where his pitch to editorial was, I need to be able to tell a complete story every issue. So it is, each issue is its own complete experience. And yes, there'll be a cliffhanger that leaves you wondering what will happen next month, but you're not, if you go in and pick up issue 5, you're in it. You get the story and you're ready to go. It's, and you can dip in and dip out as you want, as you wish. Whereas if you went into issue number 3 of Gotham by Gaslight, good luck.
Yeah, well, along those lines, a couple of things. First of all, is look at your series. Depending on what they are, Marvel tends to go a lot into 5-issue series.
Mm-hmm.
DC tends to do a little more in 6. But if you look at the stories and you look at that, let's break down, the Gotham by Gaslight. Okay, you've got those particular issues. How many issues? How many issues? DC versus Vampires. How many issues? 12. Batman and Robin. How many issues? 12. Oh, look, because we can split it up into 2 6-issue volumes. And same thing with Transformers. New story arcs every 7th issue, I should say. 1 through 6 completes the arc or whatever. So a lot of it's designed that way. But my question to the 3 of you is, and what I find is, when you're reading a trade that was designed as floppy, okay, when you go back and you read that, are you in some way kind of shortchanging yourself on that cliffhanger that if you were following it monthly, you read one, you have a cliffhanger, I got to wait till the next one, and then this comes in, versus here's your trade paperback and you read all 6 in one night. Are you kind of do you feel you're shortchanging yourself by not having the full effect of that cliffhanger and waiting?
Well, you are. You totally are. Okay. I mean, Dave. I grew up in a time going to the movies where we had the last vestiges of the actual cliffhanger serials playing in theaters. Okay. I can remember going to a Saturday after matinee seeing King of the Rocket Men, right? Chapter 4. And it would start with this recap of what had happened last week, right? And then we'd start it up again, and somehow he'd miraculously save himself from doom, for sure. We'd get 15 minutes of story, and then he's in dire trouble again, and come back next week to see this. All right, okay. I mean, trust me, heyday of cinema. Those things were so much fun. I can remember Captain Marvel and Spy Smasher, a lot of them. Okay, over the years, because of my love of them, I ended up buying these things when they got popular with fans as VHSs that had the entire serial on. Well, you come home, right, and you slap in the VHS machine and you watch chapter 1. All right? Well, am I going to get up and walk away from the TV, pull it out, and wait till next week to watch it again? Heck no, I'm going to watch chapter 2 and I'm going to watch chapter 3. But you're right. You're shortchanging yourself. You're taking that anticipation, all right, that the writer was trying to give you in the floppy, all right, that heightens the drama and whatever. In reading a collection, this page, you turn it, and you just go right to the next chapter. And yeah, it's a part of the floppies that make them fun. All right, even that anticipation. All right, I think we live in a society, guys, where instant gratification is the key. We got to have it all now, right now, and heaven forbid I have to wait 2 or 3 months to read the next issue. Okay, but there is something to be said about that. There's something to be said about waiting for something that just heightens what it means to you in the long run. When you finally get your hands on it and say, chapter 3, okay, and you sit down and you have a rush. For 5-6 minutes it takes you to read that comic book, you have a rush that you can't, duplicate. And then you get to that ending. Okay, gonna wait another couple months for the next chapter. Yeah, that's magic.
Absolutely. I really appreciate what floppy trades do in terms of providing a catch-up tool if you're doing a serialized thing where like you're doing an arc and like, okay, but you should probably know something from this that happened last arc or whatever. That's where I feel like their places. But even then, like when I was catching up on Absolute Superman, I had to do like Salinger style intentional reading where I'd read through a chapter, set it down, let it breathe, come back to it, then later in the day read through an issue, set it down, let it breathe. Just to, and especially if you're writing for a floppy, you're probably gonna be packing in a lot more detail than if you're writing for trade, because trade, like I can let this breathe, and you should let it breathe for the entire length because you don't want to you don't want to put your reader on a roller coaster and just crank it 90 degrees the entire way. That's that.
Okay.
You should pace it well for 120, 200 pages.
Right.
Whereas with the trade, you're doing the same thing but truncated to 22. So if you were to just read through 6 issues of 22 page pace stories, you get the effect of getting on a roller coaster and cranking it 90 degrees, and by the end of it, you don't know what happened because you were just kind of blacked out.
Just also remember that, it also gives you time to digest it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because a lot of times if you just, you think about binge watching TV and stuff like that, it's like, you go through so much, and like you said, so much sensory overload, so much, roller coaster and all that stuff that you miss a lot, and you kind of, pick through certain pieces and things. But when you're dealing with something and you have to wait, maybe you pick it back up and you look at it again, or you just think about, I remember this happened, this guy getting on the train here, he had a pin. Maybe that pin has something to do with it. And then you see later that pin does, and it, and you've digested, so you've got more out of it rather than just blowing through it. So
as seen in Wolf Hunter 1 going into Wolf Hunter 2.
Shameless plug.
Jose, if you want to bump in with some of your thoughts on the values of floppy versus trade, and then we'll probably use our last minutes at the end to talk about maybe the commercial choices you make as an independent creator.
Oh, and I guys, I'm gonna usher us out of this episode because I have a story to share with all of you that you're gonna love. Trust me.
So, I'm taking it from a different point of view, right? And I hear what you guys are saying. You know what I mean in regards to like pacing a story. I'm taking it from the point of a collector. Or as an artist, right? I like floppies. I'll just put out there right out the gate. I like floppies. I like the anticipation of waiting every month for, what's going to happen, right? But if it's an epic storyline, I actually like trades. And here's why. Floppies, you're going to get the portion of the story as it moves along, and then you're going to get advertisements in there, here, and there. Mm. But trades, almost every trade I have always has like a few, like 5-6 pages in the back that is all concept art of what they did to create the character create characters for that particular storyline that they're doing. Be it deceased, they have it in there. War of the Realms for Marvel Comics, when the realms were fighting, for dominance and whatnot over Asgard and everything. And all the heroes. It was a big crossover for Marvel. And in the back of it, they had the heroes in their Asgardian garb. They were all donned something. Spider-Man had the horn, the helmet on. You know what I mean? But they had the concept. As an artist, that's something. If I'm going to get a trade, I want to get one that's going to have some stuff like that inside, because I want to know and be a little bit into the mind of the creator, or at least one of them, be it the artist or the writer, for my the Killjoys. You know what I mean? MCR's the Killjoys books. I love it because they have concept art in the back, and that's what I look forward to. When I get a trade, when I buy a trade paperback, I'm not looking for one that just contains a story. I'm not looking for like a 5-issue. I'm looking for the whole story, including maybe some of the crossovers and some of that extra. Getting a trade and wait to me to read the trade. I wanted to comment on that as well, saying that it's kind of like opening your presents on Christmas Eve, right? I'm going to get it all out of the way, but then where's the anticipation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
And also, I wanted to say that that I think that might have been it. There's one more point, but I lost my train of thought when I was talking about the artwork in the back. But yeah, that's something I look forward to. Something I want to see is the mindset of the writer created these characters, and this is how the artist interpreted them for this particular story. I don't know if Gotham by Gaslight has it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does, because Batman, Catwoman, who else is it? Killer Croc, I think, is in there. Their design is different than in Gotham by Gaslight than they are in the regular, DC timeline. And I like to see that. I like to see the interpretations.
Yeah.
I don't shell out $50 for a comic book, okay, unless it's going to be something that I'm going to treasure and go back to time and time again. All right.
Yeah.
Watchmen was that kind of a story for me. All right. It blew me away when it came out. And once it was wrapped up, DC started putting out collected editions. And I waited because I had a sense they're going to do something special with this eventually. They have to. This thing is shaking up the industry. So ultimately, here it comes. All right. A $50 edition of Watchmen. The reason I bought this thing was for all the extras in the back, including multiple pages of Alan Moore's authentic original scripts with some of his notations on them, some of, Dave Gibbons on. I mean, I devoured those things. All right. I mean, it's just like all of us want to do what we do better.
Yep.
And when something like this comes out and they have all these extras, all right, I mean, that's a treasure to me, all right, that I could read his actual script and see what he did and go back to the comic itself and see what, Gibbons did to interpret it, those kind of things. I'm still learning. I'm learning every day.
Oh, yeah.
But people like this who are masters at this, all right, it was worth every penny to have that book in my library.
My favorite chapter of Watchmen is the Rorschach chapter, because the entire chapter is a Rorschach test.
Yeah,
If
right.
It is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Yes. I was saying, and when you're writing for a graphic novel, like Watchmen was, like V for Vendetta was, you're writing for a graphic novel, you get those opportunities to be a little more experimental.
Yeah.
Because you can, without making the entire thing, they're like Absolute Martian Manhunter. The entire series is experimental because that's the conceit, right? So every issue you get has to be at the same level of experimental, whereas in Watchmen, it's like, I'm just going to shove this in for a chapter.
I'm pretty sure you have to be on psychotropic drugs to completely read Absolute Martian.
I love it. But yeah, but I can't get to what another thing Jose was talking about there is like the before we pass off to Ron is, but as we talk about this a lot, but as an independent creator, you're also your own business person, and you'll get some guidance from who you talk to in printing and all that. But one things that do happen, and one of the reasons why in trades you'll find bonuses thrown into the back when something you'll discover in publishing is the idea of breakpoints for your pricing, where if you have so many pages, it's this cost per page. If you have so many pages, it's this cost per page. And there's potentially, you can maximize it, add in more value. Like if you have we have a bunch of behind the scenes type stuff, and I really want to show this to the people because I think that'd be nice. And we can either, if we bridge this point, now our pages are 25 cents a page as opposed to 30 cents a page. So we can toss in so many pages to get over there, things like that. But also something that talks about where understanding who you're marketing to. If you're going strictly for a reader-first audience, you're probably going to be focused on doing something like a trade or a graphic novel, because you're creating an experience that can be read either in a single sitting or where it's a reading first experience. Whereas if you're with Silverline, we want art collectors in mind, so we will do floppies with multiple variants because we want people who want to do stuff like this and get to their art piece that the contents of the book is fine, but this isn't my reading copy, this is my display copy.
I didn't even realize there was a thing called a reader copy.
Yeah.
Until recently.
Yeah.
I was today years old kind of situation. They're, oh, dude, if you want to borrow my reader, I'm like, what? Like my reader copy. What is that different than a regular?
It's the one that gets beat up and loved on, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's basically every copy of comic I own. So
yeah, okay. That's the thing. Most of my comics as well are my reader copies that go still just bagged and boarded into the short box. But I'll get a few display copies that either go into the display book or into one of these. I have a first printing of What If X-Men Lost Inferno. That's nice. In a display copy. It's in a display book. Right. But and another consideration as well before the business wise is your reading audience, the age size. And this is it's very in the weeds, but understanding what you're pricing your comics at is going to be different for a floppy versus a trade, of course, because you have to cost of material plus time and effort, all that.
Right.
And this is also something that's been a kind of led to the more adult imprints in the 80s and 90s, and it's kind of shuffled around as things get jumbled. But you get the DC and Marvel, they're more teenager or kid books would be standard $4 or $5 on the newsstands and then in the shelves. And then you'd have Max and Vertigo with their adult graphic novels that would be more money. And because with an adult, you can expect them to spend maybe more, $30, $40 a month. That's fine for an adult. For a kid, $5, that might be a big ask.
Right.
Well, my experiences at cons. I have an eclectic collection of stuff on my two tables. I usually have two tables at most cons. I guess that, and maybe 11, 12, 10 down will tend to pick up floppies, and most of my floppies are black and white, and they can get for $3. All right. Whereas the graphic novels I have are going to appeal to older kids, i.e., college kids or adults, and that's usually where I sell my graphic novels. Easily. All right. Adults want to pick up something that has that feel of a book, of a novel that they can back and digest and really enjoy. As like I said, most kids just gravitate to the floppies, no problems at all. So hey, it's like you said earlier, Tim. You have to know who your audience is, and as varied as they are, do your best to cater to all of them, not just one segment of it.
Yeah. Well, I have one counter to my view. One example that's a counter to my view of doing the the monthly floppy, and that is the backup story in the back of comics. And the prime example that I show on this is Grendel Devil by the Deed. When I tried to read that in the back of Mage just by following through, I got the initial gist of it, but it wasn't until I picked up the Devil by the Deed graphic novel that I actually went through and and picked up the whole depth of it. And that's
Yeah.
before even the remade version that fully expands on it that came out years later. But it took me to go and have those things compiled together, because it wasn't a single cliffhanger type. It was just a small portion of a story. So that would have to be the one cadence that I have, where actually getting it in a bundled version was so much more involved, so much more understanding. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of one of those things too, where with your creating, this comes down to your understanding of your intent. Like, how are you leading scene to scene or chapter by chapter? Like, are you ending if you find yourself ending your scenes on like your 22nd page with a lull, with a therefore transition and not a but transition, to quote some TV writers, maybe consider expanding that and try writing it as a graphic novel and see what that does, because you might be finding that you need more room to expound upon your ramifications. Whereas if you're writing a graphic novel and you're finding yourself ending like every so many pages with a massive but transition, where like, okay, maybe I can break this up and actually make this more compelling if it had cliffhanger breaks. Yeah. So, and with that, Ron, why don't you lead us into your tale?
Whoa. Okay. I sent you some covers of Boston Bombers, and if you want to put those up, okay, hold that. Okay. Now, I've told you guys about this 5-issue miniseries that I wrote. I wrote all 5 issues on my own. It is something I wanted to write. It was an alternate world adventure. After I had written them, again, per my contacts with Gary Reed at Caliber Press, Gary said, send me all 5 scripts. He loved them. He went and got an artist and basically said, okay, we're going to do this. It's going to be a monthly series, all 5 issues, and away we go. So that there is the cover to the first floppy monthly issue of the Boston Bombers. Okay, Tim, you can show the next one. And here we go. Second issue. So now we got 2 of them out. We're hopefully entertaining people. I'm a happy camper. The artwork looked fantastic inside. And we get to issue number 3. My dear old buddy from the Green Hornet, Jeff Butler, decides he's going to do a cover for us. And that 3rd issue was Jeff's cover. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Next thing you know, I get a call from Gary Reed. Have you heard from, and he mentions the artist that he had picked and assigned to do this series. And I'm like, no, I have not at all. He says, well, he's like a few days late turning in his pages. All right, well, I write him, call him, nothing. This guy just like fell off the edge of the world. Okay? So we can get out of this right now for a minute, Tim, and we'll come back to the graphic novel image if you want. So now we go like, he's like already a week beyond the Diamond schedule to get issue number 4 out, and he can't get it out. Ultimately, he calls me up a month later and basically says, well, apparently we're not going to be able to finish the series. So we published 1, 2, and 3 of Boston Bombers, and that's it. It's supposedly dead. Okay. Frustrated, angry, annoyed. What can you do? Time goes by, maybe about 10 years, and I get involved with a small independent comic company out of Maine called Alpha Productions, and was run by a guy named Lenny Gronross, who loved comics. He owned a fishing business. They sold tackle and fishing gear to fishermen on the coast of Maine, but he loved comics so much he wanted to have his own little comic company. Amongst the people that he had recruited was a writer named Chris Mills, who went on to do a lot of amazing things, and a young Paul Pelletier. I got to meet Paul before he broke into the business and became, one of the best artists that we have in there today. And so for about a year, I'm working with Alpha. I was writing a few short stories for him and whatnot. And one day, out of the blue, Lenny says, hey, we've been invited to go down to Biloxi, Mississippi to a convention. And I'm going to foot the bill for it. I'm flying all of us down there, and I'll put us up at the hotel. And what do you say, Ron? So I tell my wife, hey, a couple of weeks, I'm going down to Biloxi for a convention. Come to find out, the chief guest at this convention was going to be one of my favorite all-time writers, Mike Barr, who by then had written Camelot 3000, a series that got collected, one of my all-time favorite. Brian Boland did the artwork. So I go digging out my collection, my collected edition of Camelot 3000, pack it away in my suitcase. 2 weeks later, Alpha Crew is in Biloxi, Mississippi. I believe Roland might have been there at that show. Steve Butler was there. It was a great show. Now, get this. We landed on a Thursday night. Somebody picked us up at the airport, at a van. We get to the hotel. We walk into the main lobby, right? And there's one of the coordinators of the convention, sees us walking in, and who's he standing next to? Nobody but Mike Barr. All right. So we all walk up to each other to introduce each other, right? Somebody's introducing everybody, and somebody says, you know, this is Mike Barr, or what, and turns around and goes, oh, this is Ron Fortier. At which point, Mike Barr walks over to me, extends his hand, right? I'm a fanboy. I'm shaking his hand, and he looks at me and goes, where the hell is Boston Bombers? True story. I'm like, what? He goes, what happened to Boston Bombers? He goes, I love that series. So what'd you do? 3? And he said, I'll tell you, as artist problems, okay? Like they disappear on you sometimes, okay? So he's like, all right, he goes, I want to hear more about this. So we got to know each other that weekend. It was a blast. He was a great guy. He autographed my book. Convention's over. We fly home. I walk into the kitchen of my house. My wife's busy doing something and hugging a kiss. I'm heading for the bedroom to put away my clothes, my suitcase and whatever. And I said, so anything happened here this weekend? She goes, oh, I forgot. She goes, Sunday afternoon, you got a call from somebody in California. So I turn around, looked at it, and said, oh? She says, yeah, here. She gets this piece of paper. His name is Harlan Ellison, and he left his telephone number for you. He wants you to call him back Monday. What? Harlan Ellison? Give me a break, okay? One of the most popular science fiction writers of our time, has won numerous Hugo Awards, all this good stuff, right? I'm like, what the hell? Okay, the weekend goes by. Monday morning comes, we're having breakfast and whatever, and Valerie goes, so you're going to call that Ellison guy? I said, nope. Finishing my breakfast. And she goes, what do you mean, nope? She goes, he called you. He wants to talk to you. I says to her, I says, oh, okay, I have to, I'm telling this story out of sync, and I have to go back 1 second, okay? When we were flying home from Biloxi, Lenny and I were sitting next to each other. And at one point, Lenny turns around, looks at me and goes, I got a question for you. I said, sure. He goes, the night we met Mike Barr, I said, the night we got there. She goes, yeah. He goes, what was this thing he was bugging you about, this Boston Bombers? So I tell Lenny the story of what happened with that thing 10 years ago, all right? At which point, Lenny says to me, God bless his soul, he goes, well, why don't we finish it? To which I went, excuse me? He said, do you still have the scripts of issues 4 and 5? I said, of course I do. He said, why don't I get Paul and a bunch of the guys, we'll put a team together and we'll finish those last 2 issues. And that was the plan we made on that flight home, that Boston Bombers 4 and 5 would get done, at which point I'd contact Gary Reed and see if he wanted it. Okay, back to being home that Monday morning. And I do not want to call Harlan Ellison because I'm the ultimate fanboy. I'm shaking in my boots, all right? I've heard so many things about this guy. And now my wife's going, oh, for heaven's sakes. She goes, you were brought up with much better manners than that. this gentleman wants to talk to you. Call him. It's going to drive you crazy if you don't know what he wants to talk to you about. Okay. I go in my office. I take the telephone number, California time from New Hampshire. It's after 9 o'clock in California. I call the number. This young woman picks up the phone. Mr. Ellison's office, how can I help you? So I said, hi. I says, my name's Ron Fortier. I says, Mr. Ellison called my home a few days ago and wanted me to call him back. She goes, oh, okay. Hold on the line, please. So I'm waiting. I hear the click. And then I hear, Fortier, what the hell happened to Boston Bombers? Absolute truth, guys. I am not making this story up, okay? I mean, Mike Barr in Biloxi, 4 days later, I get a call from Harlan Ellison, of all the people in the world. And I'm like stammering, right? And he said, why wasn't it finished? He goes, I love that story. And I went, because I learned later he loved pulps, he loved cereals, he loved all that kind of stuff. I said, we lost the artist. Oh, is there a chance it's ever going to get finished? I said, well, you're actually in luck. I said, because I've got this publisher friend up in Maine, and hopefully over the next few months, we're going to do issues 4 and 5. I said, if you'd be so kind enough to let me have your mailing address, if we get them published, I'll send you copies, which I ultimately did. We finished it. Alpha Productions did the last 2 complete issues, and we packaged them all up, sent them to Detroit to Gary Reed at Caliber. Gary published it as a one-shot special, the end of the Boston Bombers Chronicles, and got it out there for everybody to see. And I sent copies to Mike Barr and Harlan Ellison and thanked them so much for their support, for their faith in me, for writing this thing. Okay, and so there we go. That was done until go ahead another 8-9 years from that point, because now we have them all in print. Rob comes to me one day out of the blue when we started up Redbud Studios and said, hey, you think it's time to put those 2 issues with the first 3 and do a Boston Bombers collection? So if you want to show that final image, Tim, like 8-9 years ago, there it is. We finally put all of Boston Bombers together in one issue and sell the conventions and whatever. But it took almost, I don't know, maybe 15 years to put that together. And I just thought it was a great story to share with you guys, because it's all about the foibles of doing floppies and how there's no guarantees that anything will ever actually get finished.
Yeah.
You're at the whim of the fates. And there you have it.
Yeah, that's a whole other consideration, especially business-wise, to deal with this. If you get someone on board with the trade and you complete the trade, like, it's done. That's everything. But the floppy is
right. Yeah, you avoid those pitfalls, all right?
Yeah.
But it's just weird twists and turns with things. And right now, and I'll add this, Rob Davis and I are now doing, after 25 years, we're doing volume 2. Because
Nice.
Rob, when Rob collected it, Rob read it for the first time and fell in love with the characters and the story. So next thing you know, he's bugging me about, hey, there's more story here. And I went, well, yeah, but come on, man, this thing's 25 years old, okay? I mean, people have forgotten it. When Rob did, every year we get together at cons, and he's like, when are you going to write the rest of Boston Bombers? When are you going to write the rest of Boston Bombers? Right? Just driving me nuts, to the point where I said, all right, look, I'll write it if you draw it, but I don't want to go through what I did with volume 1 and have 3 issues and the guy takes a hike. So we shake on it. Rob agrees to do it. And then we'd had that conversation. I said, well, I wrote the first one completely. I said, I can do this with this now. And here's the thing about floppies and graphic novels, all right? If you're working on a project together as a team, give consideration to what your teammate wants to do. Rob's doing some of the best art he's ever done in his career these days. And in those, we've now done 3 issues of Boston Bombers Volume 2. It's some of the best work Rob has ever done. And he didn't want to sit on it. He didn't want to sit on it for a year and a half that would take me to write the graphic novel and for him to draw it. He wants this artwork out there for people to see and enjoy. And you know what? He's right. They should. Okay. So yeah, 1 and 2 are out. 3 is at Kablam right now. And as soon as they post it on their retail site, Indie Planet, I'll get it out there. In the meantime, I'm writing issue number 4. And there you go, guys. That's my Boston Bombers stories with Mike Barr and Harlan Ellison. Oof.
Awesome.
That's crazy.
Okay. Well, on that note, if you are watching live or watching within the next week, make sure to head on over to our where's our thing? We have too many things. Head on over to SilverlineComics or to Fund My Comic, and it'll be right on the front page. Find Beyond the Stars issue 5 there. Go ahead and place your pre-order. And again, this is a fully completed book. You're placing a pre-order, not backing a pipe dream that will never fulfill.
That's right.
Yeah, actually, friend of Silverline, Nick Capone, actually just saw a post about how they found another Kickstarter that is not fulfilled in over 2 years. We're not those people. We do fulfill. Yeah. So we do fulfill. But head on over and get your pre-order placed and pick up your back issues if you have not already caught up on Beyond the Stars.
And be aware, issue number 6 is like 90% finished. Fingers crossed it'll be out by the end of the year. You will get to see the entire story.
Yes. And then who knows, maybe next year it might be in a trade.
Big hope.
Yes. So we will be back next week with how comic creators actually make money.
Who that? Who does that?
So yes.
Okay. We're supposed to do this for money?
Right. Surprise, we don't. And second surprise, the actual answer is via stickers at booths.
We're supposed to be selling those?
Yeah, you'll make a lot more money after patches than after book, but it's all about the game. But I'm talking about merchandising and how you can add additional value to your con presentation and all that. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That one's gonna be fun too.
Yeah.
It will be. Totally.
Yes.
Right.
But until next time.
Right.
Here we go.
Make Silverline.
Silverline.
Hey, this is Paul Pelletier. Make mine Silverline. Is that okay, Roland?